When you pity somebody, you're showing them mercy. Because I didn't start this pity stuff. It was in the Bible. You know, you find pity so many times in the Bible and food so many times. So I put them together. Pity the food.
Mr. T was never the type to bite his tongue. With his trademark gold chains, mohawk, and growl of "I pity the fool," he became a larger-than-life pop culture icon of the 1980s. Audiences knew him as Clubber Lang in Rocky III and as B.A. Baracus on the A-Team, but behind the camera, Mr. T was every bit as direct and uncompromising as the characters he played. Unlike most celebrities who carefully avoided controversy, Mr. T had no hesitation in calling out people he didn't respect. To him, honesty mattered more than Hollywood politeness, and if he thought someone was phony, arrogant, or disrespectful, he let the world know it. Sometimes his criticism was delivered with humor, sometimes with anger, but always with a bluntness that made headlines. Over the years, a surprising number of actors, from his co-stars to major Hollywood names, ended up on the wrong side of Mr. T's good graces. Whether it was an ugly feud on the A-Team set, his refusal to endorse the 2010 reboot, or his scorn for insincere Hollywood behavior, Mr. T's comments revealed exactly who he couldn't stand. Tonight, we're counting down the 7 actors Mr. T openly disapproved of, and the fiery reasons behind his legendary disdain. Number 7, Roddy Piper, wrestler turned actor. Long before Mr. T clashed with Hollywood stars, he made enemies in the world of professional wrestling. His most infamous rivalry was with Roddy Piper, the Scottish-born heel who became one of wrestling's most notorious villains. Their feud wasn't just an act for the cameras. It was fueled by real resentment that bled into their promos, their backstage interactions, and their matches at WrestleMania.
Children of America today must be sick to look at someone.
In the mid-1980s, Vince McMahon's WWF brought Mr. T into the wrestling spotlight, pairing him with Hulk Hogan at the very first WrestleMania in 1985. Hogan and Mr. T's star power was supposed to legitimize wrestling in the eyes of mainstream audiences, but not everyone in the locker room approved. Piper, a proud veteran of the business, openly resented Mr. T's presence. To him, Mr. T was nothing more than a Hollywood outsider who hadn't paid his dues. Piper felt that years of his own hard work were being overshadowed by a flashy TV personality. Their tension was so real that Hogan later wrote in his autobiography how much Piper hated Mr. T at the time. Piper refused to lose to him in the ring, insisting that putting over a non-wrestler would damage his credibility. The rivalry escalated with Piper hurling racial insults at Mr. T and trash-talking him in interviews, while Mr. T fired back with his trademark bravado. Their feud culminated in WrestleMania II's boxing match.
Oh, wait a minute. Come on. Oh, wait a minute. I knew this.
Where the animosity was still boiling just beneath the surface. For Mr. T, Piper's behavior represented everything he despised: arrogance, disrespect, and prejudice. While he didn't deliver scathing media rants against Piper later in life, it was clear that, at the time, he couldn't stand him. Instead of wallowing in hatred, Mr. T leaned on his philosophy of pity. "I pity the fool," he'd say, dismissing Piper's contempt without giving him the satisfaction of hate. Years later, Mr. T softened his stance, calling Piper the ultimate professional and insisting their beef was mostly showmanship. But make no mistake, in the 1980s, the animosity was genuine. Piper's disdain for Mr. T's Hollywood fame and Mr. T's refusal to tolerate disrespect made them bitter rivals. A feud that defined an era in wrestling history and earned Piper a permanent spot on Mr. T's list of people he just couldn't stomach. Number 6. Phony Hollywood actors. For all his larger-than-life bravado, Mr. T valued one thing above everything else: authenticity. He came from a tough upbringing in Chicago, where sincerity and respect mattered more than fame or fortune. That's why, even at the peak of his Rocky III and A-Team fame, he didn't hesitate to call out people in Hollywood who rubbed him the wrong way.
Nobody can beat me. You tell him what I say. He's next. I'm gonna kill him. Nobody can stop me. You tell that boy that.
To Mr. T, the worst type of person wasn't an enemy in the ring or a rival on set. It was the phony actor who smiled in your face and trashed you behind your back. In a 1982 interview, Mr. T laid out his feelings bluntly. "I don't like that phony Hollywood stuff. I don't like phony people making a big thing out of me. If I wasn't in the movie, they wouldn't even look at me." His words cut to the core of what he saw as Hollywood hypocrisy. People fawning over him when he was famous, but dismissing him as that wild teenager with the haircut if he wasn't. The comment revealed how Mr. T perceived the entertainment industry, full of two-faced actors and insiders who only showed respect when it suited them. Unlike other stars who played the Hollywood game, Mr. T made it clear he wasn't interested in fake flattery or empty smiles. If you didn't respect him for who he was, he had no time for you. This attitude set him apart from the schmoozing culture of show business and often put him at odds with colleagues who thrived on insincerity. Mr. T's disdain for phoniness wasn't just about ego, it was about principle. He'd spent his life cultivating a persona of strength and integrity, and he expected the same from others. That's why he often used his signature line, "I pity the fool," to describe the people he dismissed. To him, pity was worse than hate because it meant the other person wasn't even worth his anger. Hollywood is full of people who play roles both on screen and off. But Mr. T never wanted to be part of that. He demanded honesty, and when he didn't get it, he let the world know. In his eyes, phony actors weren't just disappointing, they were fools to be pitied, and his contempt for them was absolute. Number 5. Liam Neeson and Bradley Cooper, 2010 A-Team Reboot cast. When Hollywood announced a big-budget A-Team movie in 2010, fans of the original series were curious to see how it would measure up. For Mr. T, however, there was no curiosity, only disapproval. To him, the idea of recasting his iconic team was already a fool's errand. And two of the actors who stepped into those roles, Liam Neeson as Colonel John Hannibal Smith and Bradley Cooper as Templeton Faceman, Peck, found themselves at the center of Mr. T's scorn. Mr. T was invited to participate in the movie, even offered a cameo, but he flatly refused. His reasoning was twofold. First, he felt no new cast could ever recapture the original chemistry. Second, he thought the new film betrayed the spirit of the series. In his own words, "You can't duplicate that, I don't care who you get." By saying this, he dismissed Neeson, Cooper, and the rest of the Reboot's cast in one breath, making it clear he didn't believe their performances could hold a candle to the original crew. His criticism wasn't subtle. Mr. T blasted the film for being too graphic. Pointing to on-screen deaths and sex scenes as elements that never belonged in the fun, family-friendly vibe of the 1980s show. People die in the film and there's plenty of sex. It was too graphic for me. It's nothing like the show we turned out every week, he complained. To him, Liam Neeson's gritty take on Hannibal and Bradley Cooper's slick, modernized face only highlighted how out of step the reboot was with the heart of the original. Mr. T's refusal to even see the movie underscored his contempt. "I didn't watch the A-Team movie. I'm an artist. You can't repaint a Rembrandt," he scoffed. The message was clear. Neeson and Cooper could be respected actors in their own right. But when it came to the A-Team, they were playing parts that should never have been recast. In Mr. T's eyes, no actor alive could replace what he and his co-stars created. By lumping Neeson and Cooper into his public criticisms, he essentially pitied them. Not because of their talent, but because they dared to step into shoes he believed were impossible to fill. Number 4. The entire 2010 A-Team movie cast, general disapproval. If you thought Mr. T's dislike stopped at Liam Neeson and Bradley Cooper, think again. His frustration with the 2010 A-Team reboot wasn't just about individual performances. It was aimed at the entire production and every actor who agreed to be part of it. For Mr. T, the very concept of recasting the legendary team was an insult, no matter who wore the uniforms. From the start, he rejected the idea that Hollywood could capture lightning in a bottle twice. "We had lightning in a bottle, so just leave it alone," he said, reminding fans that the magic of the original series came from its chemistry, humor, and family-friendly spirit. To him, no combination of modern stars could recreate what he, George Peppard, Dirk Benedict, and Dwight Schultz had achieved in the 1980s. Mr. T also felt the reboot betrayed the tone of the show he cherished. The original A-Team may have been full of explosions and fights, but it had a playful heart. Rarely did anyone die, and violence was usually presented in a cartoonish, over-the-top way. The reboot, by contrast, leaned into darker, grittier realism, adding sex scenes and graphic deaths. Mr. T dismissed this as too graphic and nothing like the show we turned out every week. He took his disapproval so far that he refused even to watch the movie. When asked, he quipped, "I was in the real thing." That line summed up his stance perfectly. The original cast didn't just play characters, they embodied them. By comparison, the 2010 cast were, in his eyes, actors pretending, and no amount of talent could make up for that. By lumping together every actor in the reboot, from Quentin Rampage Jackson as the new BA to Sharlto Copley as Murdoch, under his criticism, Mr. T sent a clear message. It wasn't personal, but it was absolute. Nobody could measure up. To him, the remake's cast weren't just inferior, they were unnecessary. And in Mr. T's world, that meant only one thing. He pitied the fools who thought they could replace the originals. Number 3. Refusing to hate. The I pity the fool philosophy. For a man whose catchphrase became one of the most recognizable in pop culture, Mr. T's relationship with the word hate is fascinating. Despite his public feuds and blunt criticisms, he often insisted that he didn't truly hate anyone. Instead, he leaned on the philosophy that gave him his signature line, "I pity the fool."
No, I don't hate Balboa, but I pity the fool, and I will destroy any man who tries to take what I got.
The phrase first slipped into the public consciousness when Mr. T improvised it while promoting Rocky III. Reporters asked him if Clubber Lang, his ferocious boxing character, hated Rocky Balboa. Rather than give a simple yes or no, Mr. T ad-libbed, "No, I don't hate Balboa, but I pity the fool." The words rolled off his tongue with such force and rhythm that they stuck. Soon they weren't just part of the movie, they became the cornerstone of Mr. T's public persona. In later interviews, Mr. T explained why pity was worse than hate. Hate meant you still cared enough to be angry, but pity meant someone wasn't even worth that. "When I pity somebody, I ain't showing them no mind," he said. In other words, to be pitied by Mr. T was to be dismissed, ignored, and written off entirely. He often added that pity implied you wouldn't even give a fool the satisfaction of your anger. This philosophy became his way of dealing with people he couldn't stand. Instead of raging publicly or holding grudges, Mr. T wrapped his disdain in that one unforgettable line. It was part humor, part warning, and part worldview. Fools didn't deserve his hate, only his pity. Applied to Hollywood, this outlook explained a lot of his behavior. Whether he was criticizing phony actors, feuding with George Peppard, or brushing off the 2010 Reboot cast, he rarely used the word hate. Instead, he downgraded them to fools, people beneath his respect, not even worth the emotional energy. That distinction is key. For Mr. T, to hate someone was to give them power. To pity them was to strip that power away. It turned a negative emotion into a dismissal. And for a man who built his legacy on respect, strength, and authenticity, nothing was worse than being pitied. Number 2, George Peppard, the A-Team feud. Few behind-the-scenes rivalries in television history are as infamous as the one between Mr. T and George Peppard. On screen, they were teammates, Hannibal Smith leading the squad, and B.A. Baracus providing muscle and heart. But off-camera, the two men couldn't have been further apart. Their working relationship became a textbook case of clashing egos, generational differences, and mutual contempt. George Peppard came into the A-Team with the reputation of an established Hollywood star. He had led films like Breakfast at Tiffany's and The Carpetbaggers and was used to a certain level of deference on set. Mr. T, by contrast, was still relatively new to acting. He had broken out as Clubber Lang in Rocky III, but his fame came more from his look, his presence, and his charisma than traditional stage training. To Peppard, that wasn't enough. He reportedly saw Mr. T as a gimmick, a novelty act cashing in on image rather than craft. The contempt came to a head when Mr. T discovered a magazine interview in which Peppard dismissed him outright, calling him not a real actor and even the worst actor on the A-team. For a man as proud and principled as Mr. T, those words cut deep. According to accounts, he stormed up to Peppard's trailer and read the insults to him face to face, demanding an explanation. The confrontation left no doubt. Any veneer of professional camaraderie had been shattered. Hulk Hogan, who guest starred on the show, later confirmed the hostility.
Glad to meet you guys. I'm glad you could make it. You know, I had a heck of a time locating you dudes.
Peppard and Mr. T hated each other with a passion, he recalled. Cast and crew insiders echoed the sentiment. The two never spoke off-set, keeping their interaction strictly professional for the camera. Their icy silence contrasted sharply with the supposed brotherhood their characters shared, and fans who sensed the tension weren't imagining things. Part of the problem was Peppard's resentment of Mr. T's popularity. Children idolized B.A. Baracus, plastering posters of Mr. T on their walls, and buying his action figures. For Peppard, a seasoned actor trained in the old Hollywood mold, it was frustrating to watch a co-star he considered inexperienced outshine him with fans. Mr. T, meanwhile, saw Peppard's arrogance as the ultimate sign of disrespect, something he could never forgive. The feud never healed. They completed the series, delivering professional performances, but their personal animosity lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling. For Mr. T, George Peppard wasn't just a difficult colleague. He was the embodiment of what he despised in Hollywood: elitism, arrogance, and disrespect for authenticity. If ever there was someone he truly pitied, it was his supposed team leader. Number 1, the ultimate fool. Mr. T's stand on respect and disrespect. When it comes to Mr. T's most hated, it's tempting to list individual names: George Peppard, Roddy Piper, or the Reboot cast of the A-Team. But the truth is, Mr. T rarely used the word hate at all. Instead, his greatest contempt was reserved for a category of people who, in his eyes, represented the worst of human behavior: those who disrespected him. To Mr. T, disrespect wasn't just a slight. It was the ultimate sin, and it made you the ultimate fool. Mr. T's philosophy was built into the phrase that made him famous: I pity the fool. When he first coined it while promoting Rocky III, audiences thought it was just another tough guy line. Over time, however, he revealed it was much more. To pity someone, he explained, was worse than hating them. Hate implied they still mattered enough to get a reaction. Pity meant they weren't even worth anger. As he put it, when I pity somebody, I ain't showing them no mind. This worldview shaped every feud of his career. When George Peppard belittled his talent, Mr. T pitied him for being arrogant and out of touch. When the 2010 Reboot cast tried to recreate the magic of the A-Team, he pitied them for attempting the impossible.
If there's a threat from Lynch, deal with it.
Hello?
When phony Hollywood actors showered him with fake flattery, he pitied them for lacking authenticity. Even Roddy Piper, who hurled insults during their wrestling feud, was eventually dismissed not with hate, but with pity. The consistency of this outlook shows why Mr. T became such a cultural icon. He didn't just play tough characters, he lived by a tough moral code. Respect was non-negotiable, honesty was essential, and authenticity was everything. Anyone who violated those principles instantly lost his regard. And once you lost Mr. T's respect, you couldn't win it back. This is why he often spoke about pity with such force. For Mr. T, pity wasn't soft or sympathetic. It was devastating. To be pitied by him was to be reduced to irrelevance, to be marked as someone beneath his notice. That, in his mind, was far worse than open hatred. So, who did Mr. T truly hate the most? The answer is both simple and profound. He hated nobody, but he pitied every fool who disrespected him, his craft, or his values. And for Mr. T, pity was a far harsher punishment than hate could ever be. When you look back at Mr. T's career, it's easy to focus on the gold chains, the mohawk, and the larger-than-life persona. But beneath all of that was a man with simple, uncompromising values: honesty, respect, and authenticity. Those values shaped who he liked, who he couldn't stand, and who he outright pitied. Across his feuds and criticisms, a clear pattern emerges. Mr. T didn't care if you were a Hollywood legend like George Peppard or a rising star like Bradley Cooper. What mattered to him was whether you treated him, and the craft of acting, with respect. If you crossed that line, he didn't mince words. Sometimes he exploded with anger, as he did when he confronted Peppard. Other times he dismissed entire groups, like the Reboot cast who tried to carry the A-Team banner without him. And often, he boiled it all down to his famous motto, "I pity the fool." That phrase wasn't just a catchline for a cartoon or a commercial. It was his philosophy, his shield against the arrogance and phoniness he saw in Hollywood. By choosing pity over hate, Mr. T avoided giving power to his enemies. Instead, he put them in a category all their own, beneath his attention, beneath his respect, beneath his anger. In the end, Mr. T's list of most hated actors is really a reflection of his uncompromising standards. He demanded authenticity in an industry built on illusion and that made him both admired and feared. But that's exactly what made Mr. T unforgettable. He didn't just play tough guys on screen, he lived by a code that left no room for fools. And he never let the world forget it.